Let's start with just a super duper quick overview of Dreams. If you haven't played, there's two main modes. The first is Dreams Surfing, where you can search what other people have made in Dreams. And so if you go here, there's all sorts of different creations. We've got things that are featured by Media Molecule, who's the developer who created Dreams. There's also lots of community picks. There are tons of different types of games that you can play, single player, multiplayer. There's different animated shorts. There's also galleries. So if you have a set or an exhibit or some sort of scenery that you'd like to share with other people, you can share that as well. So that is Dream Surfing. But my favorite thing to do lately is to dream shape. And when you dream shape, you can create all different sorts of things. You can do an element or a scene, which is basically one part of a game. So in a lot of different games, you might call them levels. So you can create one level or one clip that leads to like a larger overall dream. And so a dream is a collection of multiple scenes or elements. And a collection is simply a organized group of different elements or scenes that you want to reuse. For the purposes of today, there's a few different things I've been working on to create a puzzle platformer. And the idea is when you rotate the platform, there's a marble or a ball inside that will fall based on gravity that you try and manipulate to get to the end of the maze. And so we'll take a look at what that looks like shortly. But to create this, there's a few different elements that I had to sculpt and create. So let's take a look at the pack that I created. The first are maze pieces, and these are really simple blocks. They weren't really that hard to sculpt, but I just had to make them all the same size. The idea is that you can use this to assemble a level quickly. So since I know that they're all the same size, I can kind of stamp them all in place. So I have all the different types of maze pieces that you might usually see, like a corner piece. We've got a wall, we've got a hallway, and then of course like a blank block for if I just want it to be an open area. So that's what I use to actually create the maze itself. However, the bulk of the work goes into the logic set. So there's a logic set that contains things like, how do I know where the marble starts? How do I know when I've reached the end of the maze? Things like that. And there's some improvements that I want to make to this, so let's actually jump in and start editing this. And while I'm in here, I'll give a quick overview of kind of what's going on in here. So I did create these beforehand, of course. I didn't just do this in the 2 minutes since I started. But there's a few different things that I'll explain. So the first is a controller sensor. This essentially, when the player starts the game, they can take possession of a certain object. And this controller sensor can register when someone clicks a certain button. So if we open this up and take a look, it has all the different controller buttons that you would see. And I can basically wire these up to different outputs that I want. So if they press a certain button, I can create logic for what I want to happen when that particular button is pressed. And there's other things as well, like there's a cool motion sensor where it can actually detect how you're holding the controller. That's actually how I'm moving this imp right now. So that little character that I'm moving around is an imp. And so based on how I'm holding the controller, the imp moves. So you can do things like that, where you can wire this up and have gameplay based on that. And then, of course, the directional pads, left-right joystick. There's also some other things where you can control the camera. I haven't really messed with this too much, but there's a lot of different things that you can do. And for multiplayer games, you can even see which players are pressing what, and you can have different controls there. So that's the controller sensor. So I have a few different outputs. So when you start the game, I want the instructions to pop up. And for the instructions, it's really simple. Oh, actually, you can't see it from here because my little creator icon's in the corner. But basically, you can move the platform with the D-pad. You can spawn the ball, and then you can also reset the maze. So if you completely screw up your maze and you need to start over, you can just reset the level completely. There's also some instructions I left for people who want to create their own maze. So the idea is I want this to be reusable so that other people can make their own mazes. And so I left some instructions here so that people can kind of follow what I'm doing now and create their own stuff, so that, you know, we can just make it better if more people are collaborating on it. So there's instructions, there's also different animations and gadgets and things like that. But I won't get too into detail right now. Instead, I'll focus on the changes that I wanted to make. So one of the changes is when I reset the level, it's not quite working the way I wanted it to. So let's take a look at the reset animation. Animations work like a timeline. So the animation's super short. I have it at 1 second right now. And originally my idea was to have a health modifier. So I thought maybe the marble could have a health box, maybe like 100 points or something. And then when I want to reset the level, I'll kind of kill the marble, for lack of a better word. I'll just like decrease its health all the way so that it'll disappear. It also plays a fun noise to let you know that you're resetting the level. And then this keyframe, that's an animation technique where you can save the exact state that you want the maze to be in. So when we get into actually creating the maze itself, I'll show you how that works. But for now, just know that this is what I use to reset the level. But when I tried it out, this health modifier is not really working. And so I think I'm going to try a different technique. So one thing I'll do, the starting pad has something called an emitter. And let me turn that on really quick. So this black circle is where the marble starts. So let me open this chip, this controller here. And so I noticed the other day that there's actually a button here to destroy emitted objects. So it looks like if I wire something up to this, it will actually just destroy the marble without me having to worry about health or having to do that myself. So instead of doing all that, I'll just go ahead and wire the two up. Now the way this spawning works is I use something called an emitter. An emitter basically takes an object and it creates one, or it creates a copy of it. And so this emitter is wired up to a marble. Oh, but that marble is actually hidden. So I'm going to turn off invisibility. And then here's the marble. So basically it's wired up to it saying, hey, when you're triggered, make a copy of this marble and put it right here. Put it right over this box. So that's why you'll see this kind of red marble here glowing. That's basically showing me where the marble will be created. A lot of times people use emitters to throw things. So if you have like a little BB gun or something, or you want to fire an arrow, you would use an emitter as well. But for me, I'm just trying to spawn the marble and just make it appear. So I don't have any movement on it. So there's no speed, there's no rotation or anything like that. It's just simply making the marble appear. And importantly, the marble has gravity on. In this game, you can control what objects are movable and which ones respect gravity. And so I do have it set where it's movable and it does respond to gravity. So I basically let Dreams do all the work of figuring out how the marble's going to move. It just responds like normal gravity would. So let me go ahead and spawn in here and make sure I don't have that health thing on, because it looks like I don't need to use health. I can just use that destroy emitter. Okay, doesn't look like I have it on. So let me go ahead and open the emitter, bring that up, and I'm going to wire this so that when I want to reset something, it destroys the marble and says, okay, start over completely. I have this reset animation, but I can't, I could wire it up to start or to basically destroy the marble after the animation runs, but I'd rather have it do it at the same time. Because I don't want the level to reset and the marbles flying all over the place and then all of a sudden the marble disappears. So instead I want the marble to disappear at the same time that the level moves. So what I'll do is I think I'm going to make a microchip here. Microchips are a really good way to organize your logic. So my wires are a little messy right now because this is like a work in progress, but you'll see that I have all these different microchips. So anytime you see this symbol or you see a lot of wires coming in or out of something, it's probably a microchip, and that means I can open it up and there's a lot of hidden logic inside. So it's a really nice way to organize your stuff. And to me, it's almost like programming or coding, where you don't have to organize your stuff into libraries and functions, but it's much easier if you do. It's much easier to maintain and to understand what's happening. So I'm going to make a new microchip here. I'm going to call it something where I know exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to say reset level. So it's just really clear, and that me in a year from now, if I'm ever looking at this, I'll know exactly what I was thinking and doing. So I'm going to move this animation in here. So now the level animation's in here too. And then I'm also going to create a node. So a node is just a really nice way to kind of control inputs and outputs. So I'm creating an input node here. And I'm going to name it the same thing so that it's just really, really clear. Reset. So this is going to reset things. I can also give it a fun icon. So actually I'm going to give it a controller icon just so that I know that this is something that was triggered by the player. So right now, when someone presses this this button, let's zoom in a little bit here. So I have it set so that when someone presses the touchpad, it triggers that reset animation. But instead of wiring it directly to the animation, I'm going to wire this to my new node. And then I'm going to delete the wire going to the animation. So that way I can see exactly what's going on here. And now, once it hits the node, I'm going to wire it through. So this just kind of acts as a gateway. The cool thing about using nodes too is that now you'll see on the microchip there's a little reset icon here that matches the node I put. So even when I'm not inside the microchip, it's going to be a lot easier to tell exactly what's going on. So let me go ahead and get back in here. So let's go ahead and wire it up so that when I trigger the reset, I also want to trigger destruction of the marble. Okay, so I've got it wired up. So now when it hits this reset node, it's not only going to turn the animation on, but it's also going to destroy the marble. So unfortunately, because of the way I set this up, I wanted the logic pack to be its own standalone thing. I don't have a way to test this right now until I actually get it into the maze. So let me go ahead and save this. The neat thing about Dreams is that everything you do, you can share with others. So I try and share any updates. So let's say destroys the marble on reset. I'm really slow at typing on here. I should just use the touchpad. Apparently it's so much faster, but I still click through on all the different buttons. Okay, so let's do that. So I've kind of named what is different about this version. All this information I already put in, so I listed that this is a contraption, it's a logic system, so it's mostly just wiring and code. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Yep, I don't mind if it's online. So now this is public. So that change I just made is now live for other people to use. So let me go back out, and the interesting thing about collections is I still have to update it in the collection as well. So since I have it here, I'm also going to update this so it pulls in the latest changes. It's like when a library is updated. All right, so now I've got the latest. I have to save this and publish this as well. I won't put any notes here. All right, so now let's test it. So I've got my new logic pack. I think it works the way I want it to, but let's check it out. So this is a level that I intend to be sort of the first starter level for someone when they start my maze game. So it's just a really simple level. I made it using those blocks that you saw before. So if I scope in, and scoping in is essentially when you kind of dive into a group of objects, you'll see that I have different types of blocks that I can move around. So I can do things like that. So I assembled this using various blocks. So that's already made, and when it's grouped together, the nice thing is that you can move everything at one time. So I have my maze created. Now let's go ahead and add the logic pack for how it's going to rotate. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my creations. Let's pull that logic set that we were working with before. All right. And normally if somebody was working with this for the first time, they would have to kind of go into the instructions and see how to work with this. But since I've created it and I've been working a lot with it recently, I kind of I'll just talk through what to do here. All right, so the first one, this black circle is where I want the maze to start. So the first thing I'll do is decide where in the maze is a good starting point. So let's see, I think I'll pick this corner over here. So let me go ahead and grab this thing, and I'm gonna scope in to this maze, and I'm just gonna kind of set this where I want it to start here. Oh, it disappeared. What happened there? All right, let's try that again. Probably moved a little bit too much right when I was putting it down. Okay, so let's try again. And for this demo, I'm playing the game with a controller, with the regular DualShock controller, but you can use Dreams with the motion controllers, and apparently it's a lot easier and intuitive. But honestly, I just haven't gone through the tutorials with those controllers yet, so I'm still kind of working with the regular DualShock. All right, so I placed the end, or the start. Now, let's see, where's a good end? I think I'll put it here. This looks like a good place to make you traverse the whole maze. Okay, so let me make sure this is set up. Oh. Okay, so that looks good. So I've got my start, I've got my end. Now let's look at the logic, and let's make sure that everything's working how I want it to. So there's a few things I do have to tweak. So even though it is a logic set, not everything can be perfect, because you may make your maze bigger or smaller depending on, how difficult you want it to be. So there's a few things that you will have to do regardless, even if you use my logic pack. So the first one is controlling the camera. So this camera is kind of the view the player will take while they're in the game. And I have it set to constantly be on, so the player can't control where the camera is throughout the game. They can only control the maze. So what I need to do is edit this camera, and I'm in first person view of the camera right now. I just need to edit it so that the player will be able to see my maze, and that it'll be in a good position for them to be able to play. So I think this looks pretty good. It's high enough that if they rotate the maze, you can still see, but you can kind of see everything happening here. So I'll leave the camera there, and you can see the icon to show you where it is. I could move it by clicking it and moving it around, but it's much easier if you scope in and you kind of see first person what the player will see. Okay, so I've edited my camera. I also need to edit my opening animation. So one important thing is when people play your game, you want to make sure you have really clear instructions on what to do. So I have a little, very short animation, only 5 seconds, that shows, where the marble starts, where it ends. But in order to do that, I need to make sure the camera actually points at where it starts and where it ends. So here's the starting camera. So I'm just going to move this over, make sure it's right above where the starting point is, so that it's really clear to the player, okay, this one is the start point and that one's the end. So let's edit the end pad now. So I'll just point it here at the purple one. There we go. So that looks good. And you know what? I don't think 5 seconds is enough now that I'm thinking about it. It's not like a long sentence, but I want it to be easy for the person to be able to read through it quickly. So that's only 3 words, but then roll to the exit. I'll just make it a little bit longer. So what camera out. And the nice thing about working with a Dreams timeline is it's really easy to edit how long something lasts. So I'm actually just going to click up on the D-pad now and just automatically extend how long this camera lasts for. Same with this text bubble. So I want the text bubble to last a little bit longer just to make sure the person has time to read it. There we go. And these are sound effects that I got. Media Molecule has a lot of really fun sound effects that they provide right out of the box. So I just picked a couple fun ones. And I don't want to lengthen these because it sort of distorts the audio. That's the one thing that you probably shouldn't just use the D-pad to make bigger and smaller. But if anything, I could maybe just move it around so that it hits at a good time. One neat thing about these cameras is it automatically handles the transitioning. So when it moves from start to end, I don't have to do anything to make it smoothly cut to the other camera or kind of move back and forth. I'm just going to pick the smooth transition type, and it'll automatically handle the camera so that it's not jumping all over the place. So that's super, super awesome for Media Molecule to have all that functionality in here. Okay, so I've got the opening animation, and I'm going to just turn this on now. It was off before. I do recommend, if you're ever making your own game, when you're still editing things, you do want to have your opening animation off until you're kind of sure that the game works the way you want it to, because otherwise you'll just be watching the same opening animation over and over and over again and kind of driving yourself nuts. So usually it's a good idea to leave it off until you're kind of sure that everything's working. All right, so let me actually double check my own instructions here to make sure I didn't miss any steps. So the first thing I did was I set up my logic. I have my maze pieces created. I put in the start and the end. Let's see, I moved the microchip. I customized the cameras. Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm glad I read this because I almost forgot a step. So let's go in now and edit the keyframe. So this keyframe is going to basically tell me where the maze is when the level starts. So I'm just going to kind of nudge this a little bit so that it records this object. And so now with these lines, that means that it's registering that this object is in this exact position. And when the keyframe is triggered, it's going, no matter where this maze is or no matter what angle it's at or what it's doing, when this keyframe is triggered, it's going to return exactly to that position that I recorded it at. I don't need this health modifier anymore. Let me get rid of that. All right, so I've got sound effects. I've got my reset animation. Now, let's test it out and see how it goes. So my starting animation looks good. Now, I might turn the brightness down on that text. Oh, I almost forgot the most important step. See, notice I was not able to take control of the maze. That's because I forgot to wire the microchip to my maze. So let's go ahead and do that. So apply to object. So this microchip, all this logic that we bothered to create, I need to apply it to the maze and say, hey, this is the thing I want to rotate and I want to do. So let me go ahead and do that. And there we go. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, now I can rotate, so looking good. Can rotate it. Let's see if I can reset. Oh, see, there we go. So, one important thing I forgot to do is have the keyframe save changes. So you'll notice after it moved back to position that it kind of just jumped back. I need to turn on keep changes so that it's permanent. Once it moves back to the reset position, it just stays there until I move it again. So let's try this. Let's start over from the beginning. Actually, before I go in, let me just make the text a little bit less bright. I don't know why I turned the glow on here. Let's turn this down, text brightness down. And we can get rid of that kind of obnoxious glow. There we go. Okay. Okay, that looks much better. Nice. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's see if we can rotate. Yep, things are looking good here. So I'm just rotating with the D-pad. Now I'll reset. Awesome. Okay, so I can reset things. Now let's see what happens if I spawn the ball and then I try and reset. Excellent. Okay, so that did exactly what I hoped it would do. So it's destroying the marble at the same time that it's resetting the level. So we're completely going back to the beginning and resetting. So I'm really, really happy with that. Okay, so now let me go ahead and just play really quick, make sure that when I get to the end, it actually ends. Alright. Ooh! This corner is gonna get people. There we go. Woohoo! Oh, okay, here we go. So I'm glad I tested that because it looks like I need to do one more edit here. So let me reset. I'm gonna scope in and I'm gonna edit the camera for the ending animation because it looks like the way I set up my maze, it's just pointing at a wall right now. So let me go ahead and move it here so that when it ends, it actually zooms in on where the ball will be. Okay, there we go. That looks good. All right, I'm trying to think. I think I'm pretty happy with this as far as a simple maze goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it one more time just to make sure. Yep, opening was good. I'm also just hitting buttons as the opening animation rolls just to make sure that I can't accidentally move stuff while the opening is playing. Alright. I'm also just gonna hit some random buttons here. Oh, that was a hidden button. Let me... There we go. Okay, so it looks good. None of the other buttons that I didn't wire up are doing anything that I don't want them to do. So I think we're good. I think this level is done. So I'm pretty happy with this, especially for semi-first attempt. So what I'll do is I will save it and publish it, and it will be live for people to play. I'm going to save this, release as playable. And you know what, I'll make it remixable also in case other people want to create their own mazes. So I'll say first edition of the maze. Oh, okay. Oh, I can spell. I can spell. There we go. Okay, public, first edition of the maze. It's a single player game. I like that cover page that it automatically created. So you know what? I like it. Let's do it. Yes. No takes backs. Awesome. Okay, so this is live now, which means that I can add it to a dream. So what I'll do, now that I've saved the scene, which basically means one level of a game, I can now go ahead and add this to a dream, which I know that's a lot of terminology. So I'll go back to dream shaping, and I'm going to create a new dream. I'm going to add this easy peasy level in it. This will be the first level you play when you start this dream. Let's see. Let me choose a fun background for today. Oh, those are old ones. Oh, I see. That's for adding a photo to the background. Alright, I'll just leave it like this for now. I'll make it fancy at a different point. Oh, maybe eventually, once I get enough levels, I can make the scenes line up like a maze. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that. Let me quick save it. And I'm going to name this... I probably should come up with a clever name for it, but I'm just going to name it Puzzle Platformer. I'll probably think of a fun pun right after I do this, but that's alright. Puzzle Platformer. Okay. And I'm going to release this as... You know what? I won't release it for now. I'm going to make one more level since we've got some time. Let's make a new maze completely from scratch. You can see what that process is like. So let's go back into the pack and let's look at the maze pieces. I usually like to start off with a corner. So I'm going to put this down. Get rid of that floor. I don't need that there. The floor actually gets in the way of the rotation. So if you do make your own maze, I highly recommend you get rid of that floor. Let me also pull in a wall. And I'll also need probably an end piece. That's good enough for now. I'm also going to turn the grid on just to make sure that everything lines up. So let me turn on grid snap, and I usually like to leave it at 1 just to keep it easy. So let's start just putting stuff together for a maze. Alright. So I'm gonna start with this piece here. Let's go ahead and create a hallway. Oh, here we go. In this maze, and I'm just thinking out loud, I think I'm going to have the marble disappear after a short while. So you only have so many seconds to reach the end. So that, I think that'll be a good second level after the one that we just made before. Oh, why is this all different? Okay. Actually, let's see here. Put that. Let's make a little hallway. Actually, let's make it bigger. Okay. And I like to use corner pieces a lot for mazes, because that's usually what creates most of the walls. If you look at mazes even in the newspaper, it's mostly a lot of dead ends and corner pieces, so I like to use those. And let's just keep it. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Oop. See, this is probably why it's a good idea to use the move controllers. Okay. Something like that. There we go. I like it. Okay. And actually, I don't think I need this piece here. Let's see. Actually, yeah, I can just use 2 corner pieces here. Then the lines will line up better. The walls will line up better. There we go. Like that. Find that most of the time you can just use walls and corner pieces, and that's all you need. Okay, so we have a nice little dead end here. Let's also create another area. Maybe one that loops around the entire puzzle. Let's do that. So we'll do something like this. And for these easy levels, I'll try not to make the map too big, just because I don't want to scare people off right away. I want them to get used to the controls first. So I'll probably add one more row here, and then I'll call it a day. Nice. Okay. So we've got some walls here. Excellent. One more corner piece, and I think that looks good. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that. Especially for your first timed maze, I'll just keep it super, super simple. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these and group them together. Okay, so now it's just one big maze that I can move around. It's much easier to manipulate. Alright, let us add the logic pack now. Let's go ahead and add the logic pack. And I did start to build in some capabilities to add a timer, but I'll just go ahead and set up all the initial stuff that we set up for any other maze. I'll go ahead and add the star at the end. Where's a good starting place? Should I force people to come through this area? I guess what's the point of having put it there if I'm not gonna make people do something? It's actually, let me put the end there. Let's put the end at the bottom here. And I find just control-wise, at least when I'm playing, it's much easier to have the end kind of towards the camera and then put the start like further away. So that way when the person is rotating the platform, it's kind of rotating it towards the camera instead of away from it. So I'll go ahead and leave this here. I think that's a good spot. Actually, you know what? It's a little bit off the floor. I'm going to turn grid off just so I can really get it close to the floor here. Awesome. Okay. That looks good. Now I'll add the start one, the start pad. I'll just put it over here. This seems like a good place. Alright, let's get up close, make sure that it's on the floor. Okay, awesome. And since I'm already in here, I'll go ahead and edit the camera like I did before, just to make sure that when the person finishes the level, it's not going to just show them a wall. There we go. Okay, so now it's showing them the actual exit. Perfect. And there's the start, there's the end. Things are looking good. Okay, now I'm going to put the platform logic here so I can see it better. And let's go ahead and start customizing some things. Opening animation. Oh, that's right. I should edit this in the original logic pack just so I don't have to do this every time. I'll do that at a later point, but for now I'll just go ahead and edit things again. Okay, that's looking good. Oh, and actually the whole reason I opened that was to edit the camera, so let's do that. So here's the start camera. Let's have them look at this corner. There's the start, and then here's the end. There's probably an opportunity to have one camera for the end, just so that I don't have two different cameras pointing at the same place, because you'll notice that before I had an animation for when you finish the level that shows you the end, and then here at the opening instructions I kind of have the same view. So I might look into at a later point excuse me, at a later point updating that so that it's not kind of duplicating logic. But for now that works, so I'll leave that. And let's see, I've got music, got instructions, what else do I need to do? Let's see, reset. Oh, that's right, let me make sure my keyframe is actually saving the level where I want it to be. Okay, that looks good. Also need to update it so that it keeps the changes. Okay, things are looking good. Right. Okay, let's just test it out real quick just to make sure things are... Oh, look at that. I didn't even edit the normal camera. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I wanna... This looks like a good viewpoint, especially for a small level. Maybe I'll keep it a little bit closer. Yes. Alright. And actually I'll turn on the animation just so I can watch it once, make sure it looks good. Actually, I just remembered I should turn off that glow. Don't know why I turned that on in the first place. That was definitely a mistake. Okay. Alright, let's just play it normally and see how it looks. And then, after we confirm it works normally, I'll add in the timer. Oh, I did it again. I didn't even wire the microchip. Okay, one of these days I'll do it without having to accidentally forget. Okay, that's good. Now I can take control of it. Perfect. Okay, can rotate. Yep. So let's go ahead and play it really quick. Oh, this is going to be a tricky time trial one. Just because I have a lot of different pitfalls that you can accidentally get into. That was not intentional, but it looks like it worked out that way. Okay, the gravity on the ball is acting a little bit weird. It's not quite moving how I would expect it to, so I might check that in a moment. Otherwise, things are working, so that looks good. So let me turn off the invisibility, just double check this ball, make sure things are good. Oop. So let's see. Properties, it is movable, and it is not ignoring gravity. So that should be fine. Not sure why it was acting wonky before. I might have to get in here and make sure there's no strange ledges or things that it's getting caught up on. Or maybe I might make the ball smaller just so it can navigate the corners faster. But for now, I'll just leave it and focus on making sure the timing stuff works. So for timing, I added some variables, and let's test them out and see if they work like how I was hoping they would. So there's two different types of variables I have here. One is for platform, so this is how fast you can rotate the platform, and it's hard coded right now to 100, and I think that's, let's see what it is, degrees per second. Okay, so rotates 100 degrees every second. So of course if you increase this number, you're going to be able to rotate the platform faster with the button presses, but if you do it too fast, it might be a little bit of a weird experience for people. At one point I also considered letting the player control this, so for instance if they use the R1, L1 buttons, they can kind of increase or decrease the speed however they would like, but for now, since I'm still trying to keep it simple, I'll just leave that alone and just keep it hard-coded. I do have some marble variables, so this first one is max marbles. An emitter has a setting where you can tell it how many things it can have live in the universe at one time. So for instance, if I put 10, that means that it could spawn 10 marbles and they'd all be alive at the same time before it would say, hey, no more, I'm done. So I only want one marble rolling around at a time, so that's why I have one here. But there could be some really interesting platform puzzles where you have maybe you need 2 marbles and you have to rotate the maze and figure out how to manipulate 2 different marbles at the same time. So I figured this is nice if it's configurable so that people can try and come up with their own puzzles or their own new mazes. There's also a timer. So right now I have these 2 off, but let's go ahead and turn them on so that we can see how this works. So right now it's set to 10 seconds. That's probably a little tight. And then the countdown is set to 6. I'm going to actually turn that countdown to 5 just to make sure that, you know, it's not going off too early. Okay, so the way the countdown works is it is wired to a countdown animation. And let me open up the Marble controller, show you some of that. So we have here countdown logic. And what this does is if those variables are on, it turns on this whole section of logic where it kind of looks at a timer, it displays in the top right how much time you have left before the marble disappears. It also kind of calculates how much time before it should start kind of beeping or letting you know that the marble is about to disappear. So there's a bunch of different calculations here that essentially it says, based off of the countdown timer, like activate this animation and let the person know that it's going to disappear. So right now the max that you can have is 5, just because that's how much I bothered to do with the timer. I figured you probably didn't need to know more than 5 seconds out. But you can also, for the very last one, right before it disappears, it has a slightly different flash where the marble glows and it lights up red. And it's like, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going. So that way it's super, super clear that you ran out of time. So there's this whole section of animation here that's dedicated to kind of counting down the life of the marble. So I haven't tested it out too much. Let's make sure that it works. Let's see the opening animation. And one thing I'm noticing is that it's showing the timer in the top right here, even though I haven't spawned a marble. So I might want to update that just so that it only shows the timer when there's a marble active. So that might be something I look into after I try this out. Alright, so here we go. Let's spawn a ball. Okay, so the countdown's going off. That's good. Let's just see what happens if I try. Yep. Awesome. Okay. It's not perfect, but it'll do for now. I think I'm pretty happy with that for kind of first attempt. Let's see if it's realistic to be able to get this in 10 seconds. That's let's see. I'll give it 2 or 3 tries, and if I can't do it, then I might up the time. Especially since the ball is a little wonky. Okay, let's try resetting. Actually, let's see what happens if I reset while the timer's going. Oh, interesting. Okay, so the timer keeps going. So that's one thing I'll need to fix, is that when I reset the level, I need to kind of kill all the timers that are happening at the same time. So I'll look into that after this as well. But for now, let's just see if this is a... Wow, I'm not very good at this. This is a kind of tricky level. One more try. I'll probably up it to 15 seconds. Ooh. This is gonna be a tough one for people for time trial. I said one more try, but look at me, I'm trying it again. Yeah, let's try... Since this is a beginner level, let's try 20 seconds. Oh. The variables are in here. So let me update this to 20. So you'll have 20 seconds before the countdown goes off. Okay. And actually, I'm going to turn off the opening animation. I already watched it and I'm happy with it, so I don't need to keep watching it every time I want to test it. Nice. Alright. It's looking good. Now I might decrease it to 15. Just make it challenging. Actually, no, for this one I'll keep it 20. Just because I want it, since this is only the second level, I want it to be very achievable for people. Oops, did I accidentally move it? There we go. Okay. So I'm happy with 20 seconds for this first level. And let's see, there's a few things that we figured out we need to fix. So the first is the timer should only show up if the marble's alive. So let's see how we can do that. So there's probably a way to detect if the emitter has something that's live in the universe. Check it out and see. Oh, what is happening? There we go. Okay. So let's check out this emitter and see if it has any settings or anything that I can use to only wire things if, or to only activate if it's on. See, so okay, so we got object just emitted. So it looks like that's only once it happens. So it's only initially when it's first created. So that's probably not going to cut it. Direction, space transform, and then destroy emitted objects. Okay, so it doesn't look... I don't see anything here that's obvious or that I can use to basically figure out if there's something out there. Actually, let's see what this is. No, that just looks like it's the same variable. Okay. So yeah, it doesn't look like I can use anything here, and that's okay. So what I'll have to do instead is, it looks like when I reset the scene, I need to have some logic to reset all these counters as well. So I'm probably going to need to add a reset node with some logic to basically come up here and reset everything. And then, yeah, let's do that. So let me add a node. I'm gonna call it something really obvious. Reset. And this is player initiated, so I'll put a little controller here. So when I reset, I want all of these timers to reset as well. So actually it looks like I need another reset node in this one, just to make it super, super obvious what we're doing. Oops, forgot to rename it. Okay, reset. So when I reset, I want all these timers to reset as well. I'm trying to figure out if there's a good way to do this. Let's see. I guess I'll just have to wire it to all the resets. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not too bad. And then this one, restart timeline. Okay. So I'll probably, just to be safe, I should probably reset the timelines as well. Let me go ahead and wire all these. So reset, reset, reset. It's a lot of wires. This is why we organize things in microchips. Okay. A little messy. I can probably organize the wires later so that it's not so crazy, but for now that looks good. So we'll test that out. We'll see if that makes it so that the reset kind of restarts the timer. The other thing I wanted to fix is I only want the display countdown to show when there's actually a marble. So let me think through how we can do that. So let's see. Right now it is set to the current time. So let me check this out. So it's showing me this timer here. So once it starts, it's going to count down from 20. I probably want something where when I start the timer, I actually activate this text instead of it just being always on. So let's see if there's something here I can use. Current status of the timer, timer finished, start timer. Possibly this timer output one might make sense to power. Let's just see if that works. I'm wondering, it may be the case that as the timer gets towards the end and the power is weaker, it may turn off the text, which is what I don't want that to happen, because that's when you most need to know how much time you have left. But let's just test it out and see if that works. Okay, so I'm going to spawn the ball. Oh, and it worked. I think it did, actually. Okay, so reset. Nope, it's still going. Okay, so let me see what's going on here. Reset, reset. Oh, of course. I made the reset node, but I didn't actually tell it to when to reset. So let me go ahead and wire that up. Okay, so now it's activated. Let's try this again. Okay, so I'm noticing at the top right, it's no longer showing the timer, so that's good. Now when I spawn it, it's showing up. Now let's make sure it stays the entire time and that it disappears once the ball disappears. 5 more seconds left. Awesome. Okay, that was pretty good. I think it disappeared like 0.03 seconds before it should, but I highly doubt anyone's gonna be able to notice that time as they're trying to play the game. So I think that's good for now. So let's also test the reset. So if I hit reset, awesome. And now when I start the timer, it should be at 20 again. Cool. Okay. Looking good. Now the one thing I'm noticing is that if I reset the ball, so if I hit triangle again and the ball's already out, it'll just bring it back to the beginning. But I'm noticing that the timer is still kind of from the last run. So what I need to do is kind of reset the timers when I respawn the ball also. So let me go ahead and do that. So when I spawn, I want to reset the timers. Here we go. Cool. Actually, let me just be super, super crystal clear about what this node is doing. Reset timer. Cool. All right, there we go. I think that might be it. Let's see. Another test run. Okay, so the ball's about 15 seconds. Awesome, it restarted. So notice now when I hit triangle, it's starting over at 20 seconds, which is exactly what I wanted. So that's great. And then if I reset the whole maze, it just disappears. All right, things are looking good. Okay, so let me just double check that this is achievable, that that first run wasn't just a fluke where I somehow managed to get the ball in. Okay, there we go. Probably would be a little bit more challenging if I made it 15 seconds, so you have to have sort of a perfect run to finish it. But again, beginner level, maybe that can be like later on in the dream where I just have the same level again but less time. But for now, I think I'm really happy with how this is looking. I'll just turn on the animation, play everything through one last time to make sure it's working kind of end to end, and then I will call it. Got our opening animations looking good. I should probably add something in there to let the player know that I'm timing them now, because I'm not sure it's going to be obvious to people that just from the top box popping up with the timing, it's probably not going to be obvious to people to look there unless I tell them. So actually, before I consider this complete, I will just go in, I'll update that opening animation to make sure that people know. So I'll say something like, roll to the exit before time runs out. Cool, okay. Roll to the exit before time runs out. And I'll just make this a little wider so it's all 2 lines. There we go. Okay. And then I should probably make the timer itself a little bit more prominent on the screen. So let me see if there's a way to make this a little bit bolder. Whoops. I don't want brightness. Learned that the hard way already. Border, nah. You know, maybe I'll put it... Actually, I'll put it in the middle. I'll put it at the top. Middle. Just to make sure that people will see it. Okay, because that's where the instructions pop up. So I think people's eyes are going to be drawn there a little bit easier than if I suddenly have it pop up on the right. So I think that makes sense. It's a little bit better to notice. Okay, I think that looks good. So let's try it all start to finish again. Marble starts here. Also exit before time runs out. Okay, actually, before we keep going, I need to make sure that people have plenty of time to read that. So I will have to extend this opening animation a little bit. Do that. Make sure that there's lots and lots of time to read that. Okay. Marble starts here. Yep. Roll to the exit before time runs out. Yep. Okay, that should be plenty of time for people to read. Might even add a little bit more, but we'll see. Anytime you get more than 3 words or so, you probably want to make sure that people have time to process it. So you know what, I'll just be extra sure. I try not to make the opening animation too long, just because then people are kind of, if you replay the game, it kind of drives you nuts having to sit through the opening animation again. But since this is kind of the first level, the beginner level, I want to make sure that the player knows exactly what they're doing and they have time to read everything. Okay, so 8 seconds, that's not too bad. Alright, and with that, I think it is done. And now it's time to share it. And right on time. It's been about an hour. So I'm going to just quick save it. It's a scene. It is a game. Let's come up with a fun name. You're timing me now. Did I use the right your? You are timing me now. Yep. Alright, cool. So that's good. I'll release it online. I'll make it remixable. First version of timed puzzle. Okay, so that looks good. Oh. Okay. Oh, did I seriously just do that? First version of timed puzzle. Luckily, PlayStation remembers what you wrote. Okay. There we go. It is a game. Do I like this cover page? You know what? I might take a better picture. But actually, for now, that's fine. Listed it. Let's get more specific about what type of game it is. It is a platformer puzzle. So, it's single player. Oh, these are not in alphabetical order. I thought they were. Are they? Oh, I see. Okay, platform puzzle. Yeah, there we go. Yes. So I now have 2 scenes. I think it's time I release my dream. And I guess, what fun name can we come up with that's better than puzzle platformer? I have to think. Okay, so after you finish that one, then you do your timing me now. Perfect. And then, actually, can I even edit the creation name at this point? Probably not. Is it too late? There's got to be a way. Yes, okay, I can do it from here. I admit, this is probably the hardest part, is naming the thing. So what are we doing here? We've got a puzzle platformer where we're trying to rotate the maze so that the ball gets from start to finish. So maybe something around marble. Rolling marble madness. Marble... Let's see. Marble fun. Marble mazes. I'll just keep it simple. That works. That's fine for now. It looks like I'll still have an opportunity to rename it at another point. Alright, I'll give it all the same tags that I gave the scene, so it's a puzzle platformer. And actually I'll put rotator here, because you are rotating it. Let's come up with a good description. So rotate the platform. To get the marble through the maze. I love how after I put the first thing that popped up from PlayStation was through the floor. Alright, rotate the platform to get the marble through the maze. Single player. Yep. Alright, it's looking good. Let me just double check. We've got both scenes in here. Cool. Let's release it. And the awesome thing about Dreams is that I can keep adding to this. So as I create more puzzles, I can just keep adding it, and people who like the game will get updates based on the new scenes that I've added, and they can just keep on playing as I add new levels. First, 2 mazes. Okay, I think it looks good. Release. And with that, it is live. So, that was Marble Mazes, better name TBD. I hope you enjoyed watching the creation of it. I know I probably didn't do a great job explaining how the logic pack works, so maybe there's a good opportunity. I might record like a behind the scenes or how it works video specifically about the logic set, because I know there's a lot of different things and wires and microchips and all that there. So I'll probably put together once I'm kind of once it's more complete and I think I'm kind of done tinkering with it, I'll add a kind of behind the scenes video for that. I'm also still working on a behind the scenes video for Women Who Inspire. So if you're curious about how that was created, I am doing a deep dive on that and kind of a little bit of backstory of how this project came about, and also like how specific gallery interactions work. So a little bit more logic behind that too. So those are coming out, and I'll just upload those as kind of deep dive videos. But otherwise, I might keep doing this creator hour. I don't know if Sundays are a good day, but I'll figure it out so that we can keep playing together. So yeah, thanks for watching, and happy dreaming.